All right, the show has started. Let me get the audio going. Well, hey everyone, it's time for Geocache Talk. Whether you're at work, in the car, or wherever you are, we hope you enjoy the show. Please give it a like and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play so that you can get all the weekly Geocache Talk goodness. Big thanks to the Travel Bugs for the music and my patrons, Doug Jones, Joshua and Caleb Slinkard, Tom Brotherman, and Jeff Arbaugh. If you'd like to become a patron, head on over to patreon.com/geocachetalk for more details. Patrons get path tags, and path tags are in. And I will show the path tag real quick. If I can get it to go. So there's the, there we go. There we go. There it is. Yay, path tags. So that's for the show. Coins eventually. And other geocaching swag during the year, as well as invites to special events only for patrons. Special support levels start at as little as $3 a month. Tonight we have a blog entry and our weekly product tip. So let's jump right into show number 16 for Sunday, September 25th, as I welcome my friend Michelle. Help me out here, Michelle.
Weidenbenner, wide, think really wide.
I was going to guess that because I knew that was right, and I just confused myself, so I want to make sure. Weidenbenner, welcome to Geocache Talk.
Thank you. My pleasure. Great to be here.
Well, I appreciate it. Michelle and I were on an episode of Cache and Release, but that was a while back, and now that I have this new show, I wanted to have her on again, or this time for the first time on this show, and talk a little bit about her books and about how you two can either write a book or journal. And Michelle's going to help us later on talk a little bit about how you can do that. But first, I'm going to brag on Michelle. She's like, please don't. No. But I really need to. Michelle's written several books. She is a award-winning, best-selling author. You won a gold medal, and that was for Shattered, I think. Shattered Dreams?
Scattered Links, and actually Cache a Predator.
Scattered Links, okay.
Cache a Predator too, yes.
Did it really? Okay, great. Yeah, gold medal winner in 2014 Reader's Favorite International Awards. You were a bronze medal winner in the Dan Poitner's Global eBook Awards, winner of the Kindle Book Promotion Awards, Spirit and Inspiration Medals in the new Apple Literary Awards, and you're an award-winning speaker. So you're an author, speaker, trainer, and coach. And you mentioned when we were talking about before the show started that you are involved in something called, you're now an uncover agent?
Yes, and it doesn't involve any clothes. No.
Not that kind of uncover.
No. Uncover agent. I help people uncover their passions and their gifts and talents so that they can unleash their potential.
Oh, that is awesome. Now, is that part of that's part of a talk you do periodically, or okay?
Well, I'm a certified John Maxwell team member, and as a part of that, we learn how to coach other people. And for me, I just find that I love to naturally cheer and lead people into what they're good at. And it's amazing how many people don't really know what they're good at or what their passions are. And so oftentimes I show people how to write in what they maybe want to write a book in, so that they become an authority in their field, in what they are really excited about. So
well, that is really good. That's probably, I mean, just thinking out loud, and correct me if I'm completely wrong here, but you really want, it seems to me, the books that I enjoy, or the books that I get the most out of, are the people who are really passionate about the subject. And you can usually tell if they're just I got to crank out another book with this
Right.
person because I've got a contract and I was
Yeah.
told I was supposed to do 3 books, that kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah. Right. And I think once people find their sweet spot or find their talent zone, we have unlimited potential in those areas. That's biblical. But
Right.
for some people, it's just really hard to find what that is when at different times in their life. Some people get it right away, but not everybody. So,
Mm-hmm. Well, like you said, maybe different times in our life,
right.
we really are better probably suited to write a certain book, whereas before they may not have been suited to do that at all.
Right. They may not have had the knowledge that they needed or the willingness or just the ability. When I first pitched one of my books to an agent, he said, don't waste your time. It's
Mm-hmm.
never going to sell. And at that point, I couldn't write it and publish it without any help. It wasn't until 10 years later that I had learned how to do that. And that's the book that sold the most. So that agent really didn't know anything. But at the time, I couldn't do anything about it because I didn't know how.
Right. Right. Now, which book was that?
That was Fractured, Not Broken.
Fractured, Not Broken. Okay, good. And we're just going to briefly talk about that. We're going to talk about your geocaching books in a minute.
Of course.
Now, interesting about that is you've been approached, or you're in discussion with it possibly becoming a movie,
Well, first,
or some
yeah,
type of. Okay.
they option, we have a contract, and I'm not sure that we're going to agree on terms. It's just in negotiations right now
Okay.
about a movie option. So what happens is they buy and they pay us for an option for the chance to make it a movie.
Okay. Okay. But just in general, do you feel like, regardless of do you feel like that book, the book fascinates me. I do want to get that and read it, but do you think the book would lend itself to a movie? Not necessarily this time, but in general.
I think so, but it's probably more faith-based, and it seems like there's a lot more faith-based types of movies, whereas before there didn't used to be.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people need to feel hope, and so I definitely see it as a movie. Of course, they'll take the way I wrote it, and the screenplay writer will write it differently, but it's a love story too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's changing lives. So I definitely think, of course, I can say that. But when I write, I try to write so that there is a character arc, and that I almost fictionalize it, even though it was a true story. And
Sure.
I didn't change the facts. I just left out some names and made the description something that I saw in my mind, even though it
right.
Yeah.
Kind of focused it, yeah. And like you're saying, there's God's Not Dead came out, God's Not Dead 2. I mean,
yeah.
So I think that there's a time for it. Seems like right now is not a bad time for a movie like that.
Yeah. Okay, people need hope.
Oh, absolutely.
We get reviews all the time saying that the book changed their life and how much hope it brought them. It's so humbling. It's just heart-wrenching sometimes. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
But
good. Well, a couple other we're going to talk about now about a couple of geocaching books you've written, and one of them is interesting for a couple different reasons. You wrote a book called Cache a Predator now, and that was your first. We've talked about this before. It's not your first book you wrote, but it's the first one that you had published.
Good memory. Yes, true.
It's been a while, but
that was good.
Never was, but anyway. Now the book really is has been mentioned that it really has raised awareness about child abuse.
Okay.
And also about being safe. Now, what something we talked about prior to the show was, and I think you've actually kind of mentioned this before. I mentioned it or somebody's mentioned the fact that something we need to always be aware of, not necessarily just out, but or when we're geocaching is what we're usually talking about right now. But when you're out with a granddaughter or daughter or whoever and you're geocaching, it's always good to be aware of your surroundings and where you are, and not to lose track of the little ones, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think Eclair Goes geocaching was really geared for kids so that they could see nature and see the things to be more aware of. Whereas when I wrote Cache a Predator, I had no idea what geocaching was.
Right.
And for me, it was a hook. And a hook is just something that is different, and it makes your book stand out. And I thought, how could I use that to make people, adults, learn about what geocaching is, but entwine it in the story. So it's really not the main plot, but it's a plot of. And what I've had people come up to me and think that I made the game up, that it wasn't even real.
Awesome. Way to go, Michelle.
I know. I'm like, no, this really exists. They're like, what? Yeah. So I'm always amazed. And so it is bringing people an awareness. I've had people tell me that they're geocaching now when they didn't even know anything about it before they read the book. So I love that.
That is good.
Yeah.
And something we should mention for those that do get the book is that Michelle knows you don't need to email her or write her.
Oh.
She knows about the proper way to handle a geocache. At the time, you had just learned about it, so it's okay.
Yeah, and well, there's one part in the book where I guess, I don't even remember where, but I must have a character bury a cache, and that is illegal.
Yeah.
And I have had several people write to me about that. And
right.
But I took this to like a librarian who had thousands of finds, and I asked her a lot of questions. So I did do research, but I guess there was one part. Yeah.
It slid through. That's okay. Well, I want to show real quick and keep track of time too for everybody here. But we keep our show moving along. But I do want to show real quick something of interest for those that are watching, and I'll keep it interesting for those that are just listening. I get viewers who are YouTube and iTunes and Stitcher, so I keep track of everybody. But I'm going to show on the screen I think something that's interesting, and we'll kind of comment on. So let me come over to the screen. Okay. Close that. Not close, but slow that down. All right. So here's the map. And tell me, Michelle, can you see this okay?
Oh yeah, I can. Thanks.
Okay, great. So this is one of your Cache Predator books. And I grabbed it and just pulled it up to show where it's been. This thing's been all over the place. Now, talk a little bit about what you ended up doing. You did it with Cache a Predator, and of course you did it with Eclair Goes geocaching. We haven't really talked about the Eclair series quite yet, but we'll get to that in a second. But you made some of the books trackable, or you had somebody helped you get them trackable.
Actually, yes. I just went to, you're a geocacher if it's a Facebook page, and I said, if you have a geocaching book that you want to plant in 50 states, in every state, I'm looking for people who will, put them in a cache site in their state with the goal to go to travel to all 50 states. And in a few hours, I had 650 people write to me. And
that's incredible.
I know, it was on my birthday. I'll never forget that. It was July 1st. And I had never typed more in one day in my life, because I was private messaging people and getting their addresses so that I could send them. So yes, it was really fun. I never expected that. And
so neat.
Yeah. So
this one's been to this book, because it's and you kind of write where when you're done with the book and you want to kind of put it back into the put it out in the world again, to place it in another geocache and let somebody else find it and move it along. Yeah. This particular of the books has been to the British Virgin Islands, the Bahamas, back to Mexico, Honduras, Belize, Mexico, then over to Hawaii.
I had no idea.
And then to Alaska. So this book currently is way up in Alaska.
How
And
did
so
you find this one?
it's just one of
Wow.
the. It was one of the ones on the list, and this person has it right now, Snap RN, and I'm sure they'll move
Must
it
be a
along.
nurse.
Yes,
Quick nurse.
so
Yeah.
they'll move that one along. So, and so then let me show. Okay, well,
Thank
okay,
you. If you're one of those
yes,
who have passed it along, thank you.
you bet. All right, so I'm gonna show this video. It's short, but it was a book trailer you did for Cash a Predator. And so let me play this for everyone, and then when it's done, we'll kind of talk about it a little bit. So let me play this, and here we go. I'll make it full screen. Is it? Do you see it? Okay.
I do.
Okay. Good.
The voice in here is my granddaughter's.
Yeah.
She comes right at the end too.
Yeah. So the for those that are listening, it's I'll have it in the show notes too about Quinn. Is the little and there's the end, the Cash Predator.
Well,
You
you'll
ready to
hear my
go?
granddaughter one last time here, I think.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That was
Good.
actually my granddaughter's little lamb in that picture. Oh, here she is.
Yeah, there she's at the end. Oh wow, yeah, that is chilling, but cool. Um, so you had some people do that, obviously for the book, and amazing. So everybody check out that book. Then later on, you've done some other books, but then I guess fairly recently you started to do the Eclair series.
Yeah,
Um, mhm.
I tend to always write about social issues that I feel passionate about.
Yeah.
And just as a side note on Cash a Predator,
Oh,
the
sure. Go ahead.
the main plot was not geocaching.
Right.
It was because of a father. It was a father's quest to get custody of his daughter, because
Right.
so many times I feel like men get the short end of the stick when it comes to divorce and custody of
Mhm.
their children. Not so much anymore as it was, but in some places it's still pretty. So
Sure.
anyway, so Eclair though, the Eclair series was built around. Um, so many children are being raised by their grandparents or grand families, as they call
Yes.
them.
Hmm.
And so Eclair is a 7-year-old girl who has to go live with her grandmother. And her grandmother is pretty eccentric. She's pretty funny.
She is. She is hysterical. Now, I've read one of them. I've read the Eclair Goes geocaching, and just to we'll talk about the book here in a moment. But what's funny about this, Michelle, you'll love this. I read the book, and I was talking with some fellow geocacher vlogger, GC Doc. Check his out sometime. But he has two little boys and a little girl, and I was talking to him because we were making some plans. We were going to be in Denver for Geo Woodstock, which I know we talked about.
Yes.
You getting to go? It's going to be in North Carolina next year, so
Oh,
maybe
yeah,
you
it's a little closer.
it's a little closer for you.
Yeah.
So what was funny about it was that um, I said, "I bet does your daughter read much right now?" And he was like, "Yes, she's been a real bookworm lately." And I said, "Well, I have a book I'm going to give you." And
Oh,
so when we were out at Geo Woodstock, I gave her Eclair Goes geocaching, and she was thrilled. But what was interesting about that was that she said, "Well, this is book number 3," and I go, "Yeah," and she's like, Okay. And she didn't ask me for book number 1 and 2, but she's like, so I talked to her mom later and she's like, well, she probably wants to read the other two. I said, well, I'll work something out. So um, I think we're trying to send her, I think you're going to send her books 1 and 2. I hope I'm not spoiling it for her, but.
Yeah, I did. I think I did last week or the week before.
Oh,
So
okay, great.
hopefully she's gotten them by now. But I
Oh,
did.
neat.
Yeah.
Well, I'll check with them, but
Okay.
she was thrilled.
So
So
she liked the
she's
story.
oh yes, she went ahead and read it because I gave it to her and she was ready to read it. So, but yes, she
It's
loved it.
it's an easy reader. It's for kids
It's
who are
fun.
even just learning how to read. Some kindergartners and first graders can read it. Not all of them. Just depends
Well,
on reading level.
yeah. Well, here's a couple pictures people put on. This one's somebody Eclair visits a Denver Public Library. Somebody took a picture of your book with, and they took it to a Denver Public Library, and
Where
then
did Where'd
somebody
you
else
find
did.
that? Where'd you find
Those
that?
are oh, those are on one of your because you made some of these books trackable as well. And
Right.
so people are taking them. I'll show you later, but
Okay.
they're taking them to different libraries and taking pictures of them of the book at the library. So uh, anyway, so that's really neat. That
Oh, I love it. I had somebody write me and tell me that, and I thanked them. So, but I never saw the pictures. So thank
oh,
you.
okay, you bet. Oh, you bet. So anyway, so that was fun to show you those. But you know what? Maybe I'm just a child or a child at heart or whatever they say, but I liked Eclair Goes geocaching. I actually read it out loud to Slinky Mama, my wife, and we read it sort of together as I read it to her. But it's neat. I liked the way that you kind of incorporated in, and you did a really good job too, by the way, on your
Oh, thank you.
geocaching.
Thank you. Yeah, I got
But
it right this time.
yes, but I liked how, and I think the other stories would be great too, where she does go on these little adventures with her grandmother, who's a trip. I love the grandmother. She seems like she'd be a fun grandmother to hang out with. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, I'm glad that that those books have currently worked out the way they
So
have.
I'm going to give away a couple of those books. So tell your
Yes,
listeners how that.
yes, right at the end of the show. I'm going to mention how we're going to do it. We're going to give away 2 of the Eclair Goes geocaching books. So definitely stay tuned to the end, and I'll explain how to get those books, and you get a copy of it. So yeah, Michelle's going to give away 2 of them. So I really thank you for doing that.
Oh, my pleasure.
You bet. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about geocaching in the media, and then we're going to jump into talking about how you can kind of be a part of being in books and journals and so forth. And Michelle and I are going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But what's interesting is doing a little research on, because you'd mentioned we've talked a little bit about movies before in geocaching, but I've got a list I've got in the show notes, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I do want to talk briefly about geocaching in movies. And what's interesting is it really hasn't made it very well into movies. A lot of people mention Goonies, which was 1985. It's not a geocaching movie, but the kids go on a treasure hunt, so it definitely relates to geocaching, and so a lot of people will talk about Goonies or other kinds of treasure hunting type movies. So, um, but other movies that have come out that have geocaching in them, and this is not an exhaustive list, so everybody you don't have to. I mean, if you want to send me email about them, you can. But I grabbed a few. One of them is a movie called Splinterheads. Had a huge cast of very famous people, but when you read about this movie, it never got a distribution. So it made like $16,000, which is disappointing a little bit, I guess. But I've read reviews. I haven't seen the movie. I've seen the trailer, and I've got the trailer in the show notes in case somebody wants to see the trailer. They do, from what I understand, an excellent job of explaining and showing geocaching in the movie. But apparently the movie's not very good.
Mm.
So anyway, and as you know, we talked about before, if you don't get distribution on your movie, it's not going to go anywhere. There was a movie called GPS the Movie. I'm not real familiar with that one. I did find it. I don't have a lot of information on that one. Pardon me. There's a movie called Are You Scared Too? It got terrible reviews. I watched some trailers for it. I mean, it looked like it was an okay movie, I guess, but it looked like they'd handled geocaching pretty well. But and then there was a movie called Find Me, and then there's a movie that looks actually promising, or two promising movies I want to mention real quick. One is called Buried Treasure. It's a short. It's a movie, but it's a short film, and you can actually buy it for, I think it's $3, and you can get it on. And I put a link in the show notes. But that one actually looked like it did a good job as well on geocaching. It has geocaching specifically in it. And there's a new movie coming out. I'm working on seeing if I can get the producer. Obviously, very busy. He's producing and directing. This movie is called Treasure the Movie. treasurethemovie.com in case you're interested. Maybe want to check that out. But I've gotten in touch with him. They're in the middle of production, so it's a little tough to try to get any attention. Obviously, they've moved the principal of photography back a couple times, and so he's smack in the middle of it. So I'm going to have to catch him in post production. But fascinating. I want to have him on the show someday and talk about the movie side of it. But they're very much into geocaching, and so that's going to be fun and to talk with them about. So then there was some geocaching in TV. Episodes of Law and Order, a couple of those, and episodes of CSI. There was one of those, I think. But really today, in today's world of media, you're really looking at either YouTube or Twitter, Facebook Live. Some people do that. Periscope is, of course, still big with geocachers. Of course, podcasts. There's only a handful of us out there doing podcasts, but we're out there, and all good shows. Check them out. And then, of course, the YouTube. Mostly a lot of people doing vlogs lately. Video blogs on YouTube. There's quite a few of those. They're really good. Anyway. So we're going to talk then. Michelle and I are going to talk a little bit about writing a book or a journal. But first, I do want to mention my mega event news, which is sponsored by IB Geocaching Supplies. The best site for geocoins, cache containers, and much more can be found at ibgeocaching.com. And mega, by the way, Michelle, it's an event that has 500 or more people.
Wow.
So those are megas.
That's big. Yeah.
Yeah. Someday we're hoping to have an event in the U.S. It's a 5,000 person event. That would be a giga. But so far, the only ones that have those tend to be in Europe, Germany, and different places. So maybe next year, Geocaching 15 in Waynesville, North Carolina, which you're going to go to, right?
You know what? I was just thinking I need to go there and hold some kind of a course where I can teach the kids how to journal or make stories out of their finds. Yeah,
I think that'd be awesome.
That'd be fun.
Yes. Well, they have little workshops, and that would be an awesome. Yeah, that'd be an awesome workshop, and you could get a little table, and we could sell some of your books too. I'll help you man that table a bit. So anyway.
Yeah. And Gary, when you tell me that there aren't too many movies out there, that's all the more reason why people need to, publish some stories about it. Get it out there.
I agree. And there really isn't, and something we really didn't really have time to talk too much about is it seems like it would lend itself, and I'll see what you think about this, to being on one of those. There's 1,000 channels now. I don't see why you couldn't have a geocaching show, a weekly show on like the Outdoor Channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
somebody who's I don't know if you ever watch Expedition Unknown on the Travel Channel. I love that show.
Oh, yeah.
That's that kind of would, I mean, that, a personality. I mean, you got to have somebody in TV
Right.
who's kind of personality,
Yes.
but there's so many interesting and fascinating things about geocaching. People who hike to geocaches that are like extreme.
Oh, there are. I see
Oh,
them on
yes.
that. You're a geocacher if that Facebook page. And sometimes they'll take pictures of it and they'll say the cache is right here. Can you see it? And I'm looking and I'm looking. I'm like, where?
Where is it?
I just, yeah, it's
Yes.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. People who do it underwater, who kayak,
I've seen that too. Yeah.
So there's a ton of those. So I think it would lend itself to something really, I think it'd be great to have a TV show, a weekly show about it. But we're going to talk a little bit now about, and I titled this section about you two or your kids can write a geocaching book or journal. And I've got some ideas in the show notes about things you could write about. Maybe just your finds, the things, the ones you found, without, of course, spoiling. You can talk about them, but maybe not give the GC codes or anything. But the caches that you find, your adventures. I don't know what are some of your thoughts, Michelle, on the.
Well, first and foremost, everybody likes to read a story. And so if you can make your find a story, and sometimes if you can think of a hidden, I like to think with quotes. So let's say your quote is around persistence for that day. And your story then relates to some kind of quote about being persistent. And how you were almost going to give up, and at the last minute you found it. But it becomes an adventure and a story, but it's not about what you found. It's about what you learned on the way to the find.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
And so it becomes a little more life lessons from geocaching or something.
Right.
But kids might not understand, what their life lesson is. But if they just journal on a daily basis, if they have their own little journal, and every time they go out, they just write a little bit about that. Eventually, with the parents asking questions like, so what did you learn today? Or what was your favorite thing about today? And prompt them with different prompts, then years later, they can look back and read that, and the value is just awesome.
Well, that has so many different applications. I have, all my sons are pretty good at journalism type. I have one son who's an editor of a newspaper, so he's kind of the one I'll mention.
Okay.
But he is, and he always has been, someone who does what you're saying. He would just write whatever it happened to be. He would just write. And I think that sometimes, and being able to write helps you in 1,000 different ways, whether it be, you're taking your SAT when you're older, when you're ready to go off to college, you need to write, because the SAT makes you write.
Oh, sure.
And just all through your education, you're going to need to put your thoughts down. And he would journal, and I think it's good. What I guess is there no age too young to do that?
I don't think so. I mean, I've had some mothers come to me and say, hey, my child loves to write. Is there any way you can work with me on getting their book published?
Mhm.
And I used to have a blog. Every Friday I would feature a teen writer and invite them to share something, and then ask people to come and read it and encourage them. But no, I think we each have our gifts, but I also think when they're young, they're still developing those. So
Yeah.
if you would have told me that I was going to be a novelist when I was a kid, I would have thought you were crazy. So, you never know, and you just want to encourage that.
Well, and from what I understand from, talking to my son who's now, in the professional world doing it, is that, it is like a muscle. You've
Yeah,
got to
good.
work the muscle. And he really did that. And I don't know about for you, he is okay going back and reading some of his early work, even though he's like, wow, this isn't very good. But, you
Right.
know, it
That's okay. It shows growth.
it does. And and he
He
has a
was
good
as Right. And he
well, he
was
has
as good as he
mhm.
could be at the time and place where he was. And that's what I tell people. Don't worry about it being perfect. You're as good as you can be for right now. And that's good enough. And
Yeah.
just keep going. But that's, for some people, that's very difficult because they tend to want it to be perfect from the get-go.
Yeah, that's and that's the thing, is he understands the perspective of where he was at the time, like you said. But it's I think it's good too, like you're saying, is that if when you can, and this is always just good for geocaching in general, and I've seen a lot of great parents do this, in that when, like, if we're out with a group and they have kids with them, and that is, like you said, what did you learn from that geocache? What did you learn? Well, I missed it. I walked past it 2 or 3 times and I wasn't okay. So you need to be a little better at checking the surroundings and being a little better at picking up on, you know. So like you said, there's things you can learn, and I think it's probably is really good for a child, and to coach them a little bit into, well, not just, don't just write about the cache was here, but
Right.
what about it affected you? What a,
And even what did you see along the way that you had never seen before? So
mhm.
even, you know, identifying poison ivy or poison oak, or just things in nature. Maybe you heard a bird that you'd never heard before. So then you could go home and look up that sound and what kind of bird was that? Or it's just to be curious and to allow not just the children, but ourselves to really be one with nature. And
Yes.
how many of us don't do that? And we just get so busy that we don't take time to really enjoy all the beauty around us and question it, be curious about it.
Yeah, that's something. I when you said that, it made me think of Eclair, because Eclair gets to learn about poison ivy, and she learns about, people along a trail. She runs into the giant. I won't give away the whole thing, but that was just kind of fun. But that's so true. That's one of the things we always talk about with other people. And one of the big positives about geocaching is take people of, regardless of their age, get them out of the house and get out into nature and do a little exploring. And that's the beauty of geocaching, is you're hunting for something, but yet at the same time, I've talked about this on the show quite often, and that is, you know, geocaching takes you many times to really cool places, and the cache may not be the greatest, but like we Susan and I found the oldest geocache in Colorado is called Tarryall when we were out in Denver, but the drive to get to this, not the greatest in the world because it's really old. It's like a Home Depot bucket, so not the greatest looking geocache, but getting to it and being able to look at, getting up in the mountains and being able to get to it, well, that was the adventure,
No, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you can write about that. And even this is a whole different spin, but what is geocaching taking you away from? Because when you go, you forget everything you're leaving behind, which is another awesome thing because you're relaxing and you're unwinding from maybe something that, is healthy. It's just really healthy.
Yeah, that's something that Susan and I were watching a special the other night on 50 years of Star Trek, and was something I don't never thought about that relates. Trust me, I'm not going to go too far on a rabbit trail here, but something they talked about was, think about when Star Trek came out in '66, and it was during a very turbulent time in our country. And some of the things they talked about were, racism. They had on the show, you had an Asian with Sulu, you had a Russian, Chekhov, and you had Nichelle Nichols. Lieutenant Uhura was a black woman who was in a very prominent position. Today, fortunately, we're a little further down, I think, a little bit into, I know in some ways we are, some ways we aren't, but at least during that time, and I loved Star Trek, but it was a little bit of a commentary on the time. But what was interesting was there were some people that they talked to who were going through troubled times, but yet the show was sort of a distraction for that week, because they were in a tough time until later in their lives, when of course a lot of these people, things got better. But for, I think, some people, we do forget that whatever is going on in some people's lives may not be the greatest thing going on right now, but if you can get them out and do a little geocaching and let them forget about whatever they're going through.
Yeah, it could be 50 ways geocaching can relieve your stress, or 50 ways geocaching can help you forget about your day job, or
right.
I could come up with so many different titles depending on where the person is coming from, and life lessons from geocaching. Just a lot of different things.
Yeah, those are good angles. That I never really kind of thought about, was that it's instead of focus, like you said, there's focusing sometimes on the things around it that provide interesting stories that are not necessarily, the cache is sort of the end of the story, but yet that's not really the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is true with a lot of books too. But it's not to say that you can't just journal about your finds. I mean, because that's interesting in itself too. So just depends. Again, it's kind of finding out, it's uncovering for that person what their passion is and what angle. Like this weekend, I'm speaking to a group of Toastmasters, and I'm teaching them how to take all their speeches and put them into a book, because they're already writing those. So, you can find whatever niche it is that you want to write in and put it into a book. And what helps is when you say to yourself, I'm going to write it to bring value to other people. Even when you're writing your geocaching book, how can your experiences help somebody else maybe going through something that they're going through? Even if it was, taking a handicapped person, or a physically challenged person, geocaching and the lessons that they learned. I mean, there's just so many different angles.
Yeah, those are really good. I need to write a book. No, I'm kidding. I do need to be better though and that's something that I think hopefully people will think about more too. Like you said, is in whatever medium it happens to be, whether it be online or if you do want to put it together.
Could be in a blog.
Yeah. There's some good blogs with a B out there, and there's some good vlogs with a V. And but I think people maybe are forgetting some of the angles that are available based on geocaching. Yeah. I really do. And we're not going to go into tonight about how to get published, but I do want to kind of talk briefly about maybe how not to get published. Is there anything you can kind of point out to people as far as, without going into like all the little, so there's a lot of little things that we don't really get into tonight, but what are some things you think that would help people in a general way to get to that point?
I think it's really important, if you want to write, because it's one of those things that you can't really get good at unless you really do it.
Right.
You can study the craft and you can read books, but until you physically actually write, you can't get good at it. A lot of times people think that they can just write a book and get published because it's awesome, but that rarely happens. I think it's really difficult to find an agent and then a publisher to publish your book. I strongly believe in self-publishing, but you almost have to have a platform first where you have an audience that you're already giving value to, you're bringing value in some way. Mm-hmm. And but I think you're going to see the whole publishing world, just everybody has a book in them. And I think because as easy as it is that everybody, so when I meet you, Gary, you mm-hmm. could hand me a book all about geocaching and you become, or running a podcast like you do, because mm-hmm. how many people want to learn how to do that and they don't know how, but you have the ability to write that book to teach them how to do that. So sure. I think you're going to see a lot more of that. There's a lot of online teaching stuff and writing mm-hmm. content and books like that.
Cool. Now, do you think the Kindle is still a viable tool for people?
Oh, absolutely. But I feel like I'm at the cutting edge of seeing a lot of different kind of media. And that is where people are, instead of taking a book, they mm-hmm. might write the book, but then they're making it a course. Oh, okay. And they're inviting people to join their course so that people have the video and they have the interaction with the person. Okay. And then they're making that more passive income. But if you think about it, it's still writing. It's mm-hmm. you still have to write the content.
That's true. Very true.
But there's more people interaction.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And like you said, there has to be, it's one thing to see it, but it's like you said earlier, I think that it's important to really see the value to others. There's got to be a value.
Yeah. Because if it's all about you, chances are people aren't going to be interested.
No, it's just a home movie.
Yeah. Unfortunately, people want to know what's in it for them. Yeah.
People don't want to watch other people's home movies.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know.
That was your, I'm glad you had fun on that vacation, but I have no interest in that vacation. Now you can turn it around and make it interesting for
sure.
others.
Absolutely. Yeah. But you always have to think of the other person. Yeah. And not about yourself, which is hard because we're all me-centered, but
it's so much more today than ever.
Well, I tried not to be.
Sadly. We have way too many selfies being taken out there of people, but sadly, we need to kind of think about.
I haven't mastered that. I haven't tried that yet.
Yeah, well, you're not like that. You're thinking of others. You're already in that. You're already other-centered, Michelle. You're not one of those me-centered.
Not always. People. I have to work on that. Yeah. So.
Well, thank you so much for being on tonight and talking a little bit about this.
My pleasure.
We're going to have the giveaway here in a moment. Let me mention though, I've got a product review I wanted to do, and this has value, as we talked about, with everyone, and that's what I try to do with my product tips, is to bring you something that really does help other geocachers. And this is a pen. I know it seems like, oh boy, a pen. But I talked about this on one of my videos I did, but this is it's a Uniball power tank. And I tell you, I swear by this pen. It is awesome. It'll write on any geocaching log. I can't get really focused, but anyway, Slinky Mama keeps it because she's better at signing stuff than I am. So anyway, I've got a link in the show notes to how you can get these, but they're Uni is the company that makes them. Uniball, and it's a power tank. And this thing, I tell you, it is. We bought this one, happened to be from geocaching.com, but you can buy them from different places. Anyway, I know it's weird product, but it really it's tried and true, and I do swear by it. So if you want a pen that you don't grab when you're out geocaching and you're like, I can't get this to ride on the log, because you got to put a link to log. This one actually works rain, shine, or whatever. So anyway, so that's my product review for the week, the Uniball Power Tank. Well, enough about that. Let's get to what you need to do to get a Eclair Goes geocaching. Loved that book, by the way. Loved it. We're gonna give away 2 of them, and I need everyone to send me an email, and that's all you need to do. Send me an email to geocachetalk@gmail.com. Mention that you want to be in the giveaway for the Eclair book, and we'll pick 2 people at random, and I'll get that information to Michelle, and she will send them your way. So I'm looking forward to that. So give them away. Please do it. The cutoff for that will be, hang on, I'll tell you. October 1st. So you've got from September 25th to which is the date of the show. We're actually, I'll pull back the curtain a little bit. We're recording this a little early. So anyway, but it's September 25th.
Make sure to leave your address so
Yes.
I can send you a signed copy.
Yes. Yeah, definitely give me addresses, and we'll get that information. So, all right. Well, coming soon to Geocache Talk, actually next week on October 2nd, where I'll announce the winners from this. Also, we'll be announcing. I put out a challenge to shows 1 through 12. There was a little banter back and forth with my guests that I had on those shows, on shows 1 through 12, about who could be a repeat guest. So I came up with a contest for my guests from 1 through 12, and they're creating a video on my challenge. And so on that night, we will present. We'll also announce the winner of the repeat guest challenge. So, but another thing that's going to be neat about that night is that I'm going to have on Dana and Molly. Molly is a dog. Molly will be the first dog I've had on my show.
I love it.
Yes, Molly is a fire safety dog, and Dana has a fire safety for kids nonprofit, and she geocaches quite often too. And so, and Dana travels around. She's been on Chicago Fire, the TV show, and she travels the country, and she teaches kids how to be fire safe. And so I'm going to have her on, and then the week after that, I'm going to have on Memphis Mafia, the Jesse, Christy, Lunsford, who live in Colorado, and we're going to talk challenges. We're talking a little bit about Fizzy and Jasmer and other adventures that they have been on. So that's coming up in 2 weeks. So anyway, well, Michelle, again, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure, Gary. Thanks for inviting me.
Been great, and keep up with you and about future books and hearing about them from you. So that'll be great. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. We hope you enjoyed the show. Email me your comments at geocachetalk@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at geocachetalk and Facebook at facebook.com/geocachetalk. The show can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, as well as geocachetalk.com website. Tell your friends about the show and ask them to subscribe so they too can hear the show on a weekly basis. Until next week, don't just talk about geocaching, or as Eclair did, you need to go geocaching. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
And then let me stop.